Good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this episode of Hit Talks Live, the talk show which is all about hope, inspiration and transformation. Yes, 8 speakers speaking for 8 minutes from the heart. Okay, so none of the speakers here have any agendas, they don't have any intentions. All they're actually led with and all they're guided when they come on to Hit Talks and be part of Hit Talks is to speak from the heart. Just share with us some hope, share with us some inspiration, share with us some transformation. And when you get to know these speakers, you will actually see, you will also feel, which is really important, because Hit Talks is all about feeling. It's all about feeling the love. It's all about feeling the energy. And it's also about feeling the intentions of all the speakers, that every single person here has the intention, as I said, to share with you hope, inspiration and transformation. And people say to me, Vicky, what's it all about? 8 speakers for 8 minutes on 8 different perspectives. And I have to say, well, it's different, isn't it? You know, our attention span of listening to talks now for 18 minutes or even longer, I don't know about you, but my attention span is like a little bit shorter now. So it's very much like, you know, put in snippets of wisdom from people from all over the world, snippets of wisdom, as I say, on hope, inspiration and transformation for 8 minutes. 4 men, 4 women. Number 8, polarities, infinity, balance, abundance, you know, the power of 8. It's just absolutely magical. And one thing that I really would urge you to do is, you know, take as many notes as you can, or just literally just breathe it in, suck it in, feel it, because I can promise you that when you literally do from the heart, start really oozing in the love and the hope, the inspiration and the transformation that everybody is here to share with you, then I know, and every other speaker knows, and you know, that it really can make a difference in your life. And it's just been, I've loved it. It's just been so powerful. And the people that are being part of this is even more inspirational because, as I say, the intention to spread the love and spread the messages. And so I want to be able to bring our first speaker on. And our first speaker is all the way from Hollywood in Los Angeles. And he's been part of Hit Talks since we created it. And it's amazing to have him part of it. And Rick is an American screenplay. He's an actor, he's a director, he's a comedian, he's an author. You know, you can see his numerous awards that he's got. You know, he's got his own show, Latino Thought Makers, and he's worked in films starring amazing people like George Clooney, as you can see. And Rick, I just love that you start the show because, you know, you truly deliver from the heart, and you've got no idea what you're going to be talking about, because that's the whole thing about Hit Talks. It's inspiration straight from the heart, straight about hope, inspiration and transformation. So Rick, I give you your 8 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicky. I'm calling you from Hollywood, California. Well, actually, let's clarify that. Hollywood, no one who works in Hollywood actually lives in Hollywood. Hollywood is one of the worst places in LA. So just to let you know, Hollywood is in many ways kind of fake. It's a lot of dreams. It's a lot of things that we smoke and mirrors. I mean, our own country has a reality star as president. So I think in some ways Hollywood has done more harm than good. But what Hollywood does do well is inspire. Hollywood tells stories. Hollywood, and that's what I do. I write stories, and I tell these stories. And one of the ways, and I was thought about this morning, is I never prepare for these speeches or talks when we talk. And the reason is I'm actually following an idea of faith, that I will still myself and listen for something that I'm hearing out there in the universe that will talk to me. And I believe there's a small, still voice in all of us, and that's where writing and inspiration comes from. It's a small, still voice that when we listen to it, it inspires us. And writers are so much more than really writers. We're actually scribes. In other words, we hear a voice and we write it down. We hear a voice and we convey it to the rest of us around the campfire, or telling our stories. And that's what I thought about today. Is when I woke up, there was 2 things that came to me. One was that women should lead. That was very strong in my head. And the other thing was justice. Those 2 things. women should lead in justice. And I thought to myself, why am I hearing women should lead in justice? Why is that? And I started thinking about my life. And I remember one time I was performing in Pennsylvania, of all places. I think it was Allentown, where all the steel mills had been. You saw these huge steel mills, and they were now rusting and over. That time in America was done. And there I was performing, but a group of Native Americans, Apaches actually, had come there to bless the dead. They took Apache students from warm areas in the Southwest, and they moved them all the way to Pennsylvania to go to an Indian school where they would teach them the ways of the white man and civilize them in their own way. And all of a sudden, these Apaches came to bless the graves of the students who had lived, who had died there from pneumonia and other diseases. I met them. They came and they heard about my show, and they called me up and they actually said, "Can I come see your show?" And I said, "Oh, sure." And there's a group of about 20 kids that we allowed to see the show. And afterwards, they said, "Can we bless you?" And they blessed me, pollen and eagle feathers and all these different beautiful things. And the head of the spiritual leader of the Apache tribe gave me a special blessing for the performance. And at the party afterwards, I went there and they pointed out certain women. And he said, "You see that young girl? Her great-great-grandfather was Geronimo. And she's the best hunter in our entire village. They hunt elk. And she said, of all the hunters we have, she is the best hunter, and we always follow her lead. She's the best." And he pointed out different women. He said that woman was the great-great-granddaughter of another great leader of the Apache Nation. And I started seeing a pattern of women leading. And it was understandable, and it was good. And a lot of times when we talk about what's happening in America now, we're really talking about a question of justice, and then equality. Words like that mean so much to us. And we're still fighting a civil war that I thought we had fought about 150 years ago, but it still keeps coming up. Civil War monuments, all these kind of things. It seems to be two worlds. One is a world stopping people from being the greatest they can be, their full potential. In other words, a word that says that a woman shouldn't lead, or a Mexican American shouldn't have certain rights, or an African American shouldn't have certain rights, on things like Black Lives Matter. And when you hear Black Lives Matter in America, it's such a simple thing to say, yes, Black Lives Matter. It's not even a great thing. It's not saying Black lives are stupendous, Black lives are amazing, Black lives are this. No, simply Black Lives Matter. And that becomes a rallying cry where people yell back, all lives matter. And the truth is, Black lives do matter. Black lives are under attack now in America, and many of our freedoms are under attack now in America, and that's justice. And the people that I have seen in my life who have been terribly involved in justice were, two of my cousins are married to Cesar Chavez. And Cesar Chavez in America is a great farm leader. He was a man who was a civil rights leader in many ways. He was to us our Martin Luther King in the Latino world. And Cesar Chavez, when I went to his home and I spoke to his wife and all the people, what they reminded me always is that Cesar Chavez, actually, the movement was run by many ways women, Dolores Huerta, all women such as that. And then I saw a pattern there. Women lead. Women give us life. Women give us birth. They give us children. Women look after, in many ways, many times the home. That was my experience. But my great-grandmother was a union organizer in the canneries of San Diego. And I saw leadership always among women. If anything I can look at now and say that we're trying to learn is that we should let women lead. We should strive for justice. And in 1992, when the riots happened in Los Angeles, one of the biggest riots we've ever had, and now recently we had riots also, the number one thing that seemed like people were rioting about was justice. I kept hearing that word, justice, no peace, no justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. That was always the chant, no justice, no peace. I thought about that my words today would be about justice and women leading. Because without women leading, there is no justice. There is no, as what Vicky has done here, of 4 men, 4 women. There is no balance. And that's what the world's looking for right now in this pandemic, is balance. And it is a pandemic. I mean, we joked about before I came on the show that behind me is an award, but there's also pine salt. We're very hygienic in America right now. We're terrified. And we're also politicized. And I know people don't want to talk about politics when it comes to spirituality and things like that and inspiration, but actually, politics and things like that has inspired us. Politics has inspired us to be better than we've ever been. Politics has inspired us to care more for our fellow man or woman. Politics has talked about unions and things like that that create a system of justice. We need more justice, and we need more women that are leading. And I guess that's my words today, justice and leadership. And you're going to hear different speakers speak today. And if you're hearing all these different speakers speak, there's one thing you'll have in common. You're going to hear a point of view, an understanding from a different part of the world that will lead you to your understanding of what you need to hear. Because we're all here in this community. We're all basically, as a writer would have us, we're telling stories. We're around the campfire. We're warming ourselves around the campfire. We're warming ourselves together, and we're building a community. And this is what I think HIT is, a community of people that really believe the same things: hope, inspiration, transformation. Hope is because hope is necessary. Without hope, we don't wake up in the morning, basically. Inspiration is necessary to give us a vision of what we want to do. And transformation is actually what happens to you when you keep changing. You transform. We're constantly in growth and transformation. Now, we can either transform to our better selves or transform to our worser selves, but it's a choice we make, transformation. So today, when you hear the people speak, and since I seem to be the first one speaking, I have to say this. I want to preface this for the other fellow speakers who will speak. And every time I listen, I write down notes and I hear what is being said. And I'm saying, that's beautiful. This is great. Let me bring that into my life. And everyone you hear to speak is actually a prophet in your own life. Actually is someone giving a message in your own life that you need to hear. And today you may hear a message that you may not even you think applies to you, but years later will. The message you need to hear today, I will encourage you to listen to, because there's a message here for you. There's a message for you, as the speakers will tell you, but also you're the listener. For communication, you need the person to say the words, then someone to listen to the words and translate in their own mind. If I say the word apple, some of you might see a red apple or a green apple, depending on your experience with apples. That's what the words are. If someone there in England mentions a word that I haven't heard before, there is a meaning behind it. There's a word behind it. There's a picture behind it. Look at in the old days of Neanderthal men putting up on cave paintings of a horse, a simple thing such as a horse, that a man or a woman in this time can look at that same cave painting and recognize a horse. They are communicating from thousands of years ago to a person there. And that's what's going to happen today. A feeling of communication, a feeling of transformation, but also a feeling of community. And I would ask you to take a moment, breathe and listen, and wait for the message you need to hear. And that message will be from the world. And that message will be from a spiritual place. And I have to say, thank you for this talk. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Rick. Yes, yes, yes. And I know that your previous speech was about yes, 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 but about transforming. And it's all about little snippets of transformation. It's all about little snippets of wisdom. As I said, when we first introduced this talk show, this episode, it is all about talking from the heart. It's all about the wisdom, and we all have wisdom inside of us. And as we were saying, it's like little butterflies. We're all little prophets. We're all little prophets inside little caterpillars. Little prophets inside little caterpillars, and then these caterpillars then just explode into freedom and flutter and give us so much hope, give us so much inspiration, and then really can guide us to transform. And I also truly believe, from doing all of these episodes and meeting so many amazing people and listening to all the amazing stories that everyone has to share, it's inspired me greatly. It really has. Every single person that speaks, as you say, there's just maybe a snippet, there may be just a word, there just may be something that we're going to be able to bring into our life now, next week, next month. It might even be next year, but then it will just click, and then you'll think, oh my gosh, I remember that message. And this brings me on to my next speaker, all the way from Boston. And we met back in in November of last year, and she said to me about meditation, and it was amazing because, you know, she is an amazing person who is also a meditator and has been teaching meditation for the last 40 years. And Dr. Amito used to say to me is that, you know, have you tried meditation? And I've been meditating for many, many years, but not in the way that I was taught since I've been involved with Amita and since I've been involved in a new meditation practice. So Amita, she's also part of Hit Talk since we started. You know, she's done amazing things in the world, and I would love to be able to give Amita her 8 minutes to be able to share her heart on hope, inspiration, and transformation.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, my little unicorn. So happy to be with all of you this morning again. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
So it's really, actually, you talk about synchronicity, and it's quite amazing that Rick began with the feminine and the masculine principles and the power in each one. And that's exactly what I thought I would talk to you about when I woke up this morning and started to collect my thoughts about what I was going to say. And the first thing that came to me was, well, I think I'm going to talk about the origin of the Indian goddesses, the Hindu goddesses. Yes. And so I'm going to tell you this in a very, very simple way, because the Hindu mythology gets so complicated, just like the Greek and the Roman mythologies get complicated with all the different names. So we always begin with pure cosmic consciousness and awareness, because that is the beginning. That is the formless, genderless, supreme being. So it's also called Paramatma. That means something that goes beyond the self. And so there are two aspects to this cosmic consciousness, or pure awareness, or pure being, or pure existence. And they are the divine masculine energy and the divine feminine energy. The divine masculine is known as Purusha, and the divine feminine energy is known as Prakriti, or nature. Now, it's interesting. Whatever roles we may have assigned to the genders, this is how it's described in the Upanishads and in the Vedas and the ancient texts. And what they say is that the divine masculine energy is the passive awareness. The masculine takes no role in no active part in the actual creation of the universe. It is simply a witness to the creation and has no attributes. On the other hand, Prakriti, which is the divine active awareness of the universe, is also known as the divine mother. It is also known as Adi Parashakti, long name, don't worry about it. But it basically is the primordial energy of the universe. And this is the one that desires to be many. And this is where the entire universe is created, in the womb of the Divine Mother. We were talking about birth, and we were talking about procreation. We were talking about fertility, and all those are the attributes. Now, it's interesting that the same archetypes are present in the Roman goddesses, in the Greek goddesses, and in fact, going way beyond them, like 25,000 years ago, the goddess that was worshipped, there were no gods. There was only the great goddess, or the Divine Mother. That was the only feminine that was worshipped, and it had to do with procreation, had to do with fertility, had to do with giving birth. And so, in the Hindu pantheon, the masculine energy has three aspects, and it is the Trinity, the male Trinity, which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma, each one of these has a function. So Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, And Shiva is the destroyer, because they take care of those cycles of the universe where it's created, preserved, and then destroyed. It goes into dissolution. That completely goes with the modern science of universes as they expand, and then they contract, and go into the dark holes. So the female trinity is the three goddesses, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Parvati. So these are manifestations of, or personifications of the Divine Mother, or the primordial energy, which we were calling the Prakriti. And they are Saraswati, who is the goddess of wisdom, the arts, and the sciences. Lakshmi, who is the goddess of abundance, of beauty and grace and affluence, abundance, and infinite riches. And Parvati, who is the goddess who destroys ignorance or evil. So she has the courage, all the power, all the energy, destructive energies lie within her. Now, these gods and goddesses, the Trinity, are often coupled. So Brahma goes with Saraswati, Vishnu goes with Lakshmi, and Shiva goes with Parvati. Now, I'll explain to you what these myriads of gods in the Hindu pantheon are and what they mean. They are nothing more than the various incarnations or the various personifications of the particular values of creation. So we're not, you can make idols out of them and create beautiful images that stick in your mind, but they're basically just impulses of nature. Those impulses that you need to give you inspiration at that particular moment. So when I'm looking for inspiration in terms of arts and music and sciences, I look to Saraswati. My goddess Saraswati, help me with this, please. I really need to give this talk today. Will you come sit in my tongue so whatever I say makes sense? And then if I need to be pretty and abundant and look affluent and beautiful, I would go to Lakshmi and say, come on, Lakshmi, you help me today. And today I'm going to be beautiful and graceful, and I'm going to look so pretty. And then when I want power, and I want energy, and I want to fight, then I go into Parvati and I say, come on, Parvati, you've got to help me. But they are all basically impulses of nature that I use to help me find that hope, that inspiration, and then transform me to what I really want to be. So there are hundreds and thousands of incarnations, representations, personifications of all the deities that we see that are so confusing in Hinduism. And people say, what kind of a religion is this? What an archaic, what a pagan type of religion. But no, if you understand that the basic thing is all nothing but cosmic consciousness, pure awareness, out of which the male and the female, the feminine and the masculine principles come out, and that these must be always in full balance to really manifest creation in its perfection. So it's not like one is better than the other or more powerful than the other. It's really, although I must say I'm partial to the feminine energy, but it's the balance between the male and the female that allows you to bring perfection in your lives. So that brings me to the conclusion of my session, and thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Amita. Oh, you're my galactic unicorn sister. And that's the thing about the balance, isn't it? And it's the flow, it's the yin and it's the yang, and it's all about the polarities. And when I first started Hit Talks, as I say, when in the introduction, it was a download, it was a message, it wasn't anything that I had in my intentions or even in my visions to do. And then it was like 4 women, 4 men, and it was definitely guided. And it was one of the goddesses that definitely guided me and said, this is how it is going to work, this is how it's going to happen. And actually just take the inspiration from from the people that we know all over the world. We all know amazing people. And, you know, I invite everybody that's watching here live, I invite everybody that's watching the replay, and I invite you that if you know some people and you know they're inspirational people, and you know that they've got a story or a message to spread, some gift in the world, you know, connect them to us, because, you know, the idea of this platform is to get the inspiration out to the world, get the hope out into the world, get the transformational messages out into the world. And it's also about believing, and it's also about trusting, and also about really having a vision of where you do want to go. I know that for me personally, that when I know I want to go somewhere after I've taken the divine guidance and it's been agreed, then I'm able to go forward with my masculine energy, but then with surrender of my feminine energy. And from a very corporate business world where I was constantly in my masculine energy, bring a little bit feminine energy into it took a little bit of work. And it's actually been the polarity of bringing it all together with balance and with harmony and knowing where you want to go. And this brings me on to the next speaker, who's also in the USA, because I really love what he does with the world. I love the messages that he spreads. You know, I reached out to Aaron, and, you know, I know that we're going to become good friends because of the work that he's doing in the world, and the connections that you get from a soul perspective when you meet people. And, you know, and again, he's from California, and his background is, as you can see in the bio, that, you know, he's a pastor's son. And he is doing so much in the world now, so much in the world to actually transform people's lives. He has an amazing YouTube channel, and you need to go and visit. But I would just like to give these 8 minutes to Aaron, where he can spread his hope, his inspiration, and his transformation. Thank you, Aaron, for being with us today.
Thank you, Vicky, so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And good morning to all those of you in the West, and good evening to those of you in the East. I'm going to be breaking the theme of the masculine feminine a little bit here, but I think Vicky kind of began by talking about the theme for this week's Hit Talk being that of abundance. Yeah. So I was thinking about what I can share in 8 minutes. Let me hit my timer before I forget. What I could share in 8 minutes that would give the most amount of value. And so, as my bio said, I like to teach, one of the things I like to teach is non-duality. And I think today I'd like to give you a bit of a different angle on what the ego is. And I know our previous speaker was talking a lot about Hindu mythology, gods and goddesses. And that's, you know, Hinduism is basically the origin of non-duality. So non-duality talks about this concept of truth versus illusion a lot. And the ego represents that part of us that is the illusion of being a separate self, separate from our source. So I'd like to help you, you know, in order to kind of transcend the ego's influence on our behavior and on our thought patterns, it's really helpful to have a solid kind of understanding of what the ego is, where it comes from, and, you know, why it thinks the way that it thinks. So from my personal perspective, I sort of like to look at the ego from the lens of evolution, or maybe science, you could say. So if we ask the question, where did our egos, why do we have egos, right? And where did they originate from? We can go back to the advent of human language and see that as a very likely place where the ego began. When humans began using verbal language to name objects, you know, at some point, you know, if we evolved from higher hominids, that group of hominids would have started communicating with guttural noises and things of that nature to communicate about objects and eventually about one another. Right? So when you have a noise that means me, that allows the mind to develop self-awareness, where I become a concept or an object unto myself. And this is the point where the ego would have first sort of began. So if we look at our biology, we have a fight, flight, or freeze response, right? When we are in danger of any kind, the body responds with adrenaline, which is the biological fight, flight, or freeze. So I would like to, you know, a bit of an oversimplification maybe, but if we wanted to oversimplify the ego, I would like to offer you the idea that the ego is our social fight, flight, or freeze response. And I'll explain why. So the Course in Miracles defines the ego as the belief in separation. When I believe I'm separate, separate from the source, separate from the world outside of me, that's what creates an ego. Eckhart Tolle, for example, likes to commonly define the ego as any identification with form. And I love both of these definitions for different reasons, and I think they're both very accurate. But I'd like to maybe see the ego from the perspective of why it believes it's separate and why it identifies with form. So we as humans essentially have three negative emotions: sadness, anger, and fear. So I'd like to show you how sadness is actually the ego's modulation of our flight response. So the ego turns that response, which is the need to escape from pain of some kind, into an emotional need for flight or an emotional need for escape. And the emotional need for escape is what we experience as sadness and all of its variations, whether that's depression, hopelessness, loneliness, and so forth. That's you emotionally desiring to escape from pain and not being able to escape. Now, anger is the ego's modulation of the biological fight response. This is the need to attack or the need to defend yourself against pain. So this is essentially the ego using that adrenaline to create what we experience as anger. Now, each one of these emotional responses, we could say, has a primary belief that kind of motivates that response. So going back to the first response, which is flight, which is sadness, the ego's primary belief in our minds that causes us to experience sadness is the belief, I am incomplete, I am lacking. And the theme for today being abundance, this is kind of the ego's main shtick, it's the belief in lack, the belief that it is separate. The second belief of the ego kind of follows suit of the first one, and it's the belief that creates anger again. And this belief is my happiness or my completion depends on outcomes, depends on achieving, positive, pleasurable outcomes for myself. And the reason that this belief causes anger in all of its variations is because anger is when a goal gets blocked, right? When an outcome is blocked, when I believed that this thing I wanted, whether it's an actual object or whether it's the opinion of somebody else or being right or whatever the outcome is, if I don't get that outcome, I am frustrated, I'm angry, I'm guilty or somebody else is guilty, and I'm ready to fight to get the outcome that I want. And then the third and final belief of the ego correlates with, again, the third negative emotion, which is fear. And that's the freeze response, right? When an animal in the wild, let's say, is confronted with an attacker or a predator and it is caught off guard, usually they freeze first before they're deciding, should I fight or should I flight? And this freeze response is what the ego modulates into fear. Now, fear is the emotional need to have control and not having that control, right? We become fearful when we believe we're losing control. Or, a panic attack, an anxiety attack is when you believe something like maybe your physical body or your cognition you're losing control over that. It creates fear. So fear, again, is the belief that I am in control. I'm the controller of my life. And, if that control gets taken away from me, it terrifies me. It makes me feel a sense of separation. So to kind of summarize again, to wrap that up, the ego modulates that primitive biological fight, flight, or freeze response in our minds into a psychological need for fight, flight, or freeze. And this, is just a product of the way that we as humans evolved as a social complex, as social entities. At some point through the advent of language, we began forming tribes and families and jobs and religions. And so the ego, something in our mind had to evolve to keep up with that, right? And that mechanism is our ego, which gives us a sense of social identity. So to summarize, we can overcome this belief in lack by being aware of these three beliefs. I am incomplete, my happiness depends on outcomes, and I am in control. If we correct these misperceptions on a daily basis, reminding ourselves, I'm the source of everything I want. I, as a separate being, am not in control, but the universe, the source, is in control. Then through that, we can truly live with peace and become more self-aware of where these negative thought patterns come from. So that about wraps it up for me. I'll put a pause on my timer. And thank you, Vicky, very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that amazing, amazing speech, Aaron. I do have to say that everything is synchronicity. There isn't any such thing as coincidence. And it's only been today and over the last week that I've been doing quite in-depth training with my clients about ego versus soul. But it's a continuous journey. And, you know, many of us as well, that especially, you know, academics, corporate, and people that have actually been, you know, on a kind of driven material journey. And many of us, you know, give me a wave, anybody, any of us that have actually been on this materialistic journey. You know, it is led by the ego. And one thing I know to be true for myself and for the many people that I speak to as well, one of the benefits and the positives of what's happened in the world in 2020 is that we've had time to reflect. We've had time to go within. We've had time to actually put our ego aside perhaps, and then really see what's important. And what's important is really ourselves. And what's important is really the love that we can give to others. And ego work, you know, I am a big, big advocate of ego work for anybody, because the more that we can actually put our ego in a box and start to live from our soul and start to deliver from the soul. And this is, again, one of the reasons that Hit Talk was created. It wasn't created from ego. It wasn't created from any other place other than giving hope, inspiration, and transformation into the world. And I think ego work and, you know, the fear and the blockages that we have inside of our body, inside of our, you know, our cells and our organs, because definitely there's a lot of these held in our organs. You know, many of you on the call know the amount of flushes and, you know, the amount of work I do with clearing from your body as well as your mind. So anyway, that brings me on to my next speaker, and definitely about fear as well, and using your body to actually clear fear as well, because Shadi, when you see what she's done, and we start talking about, you know, the adventurer in her as well, is that we were speaking and she was saying, oh, I'm going to be going to the North Pole. And I was like, I'm going to come. She said, in November. I said, I'm going to come, I'll train. She said, November 2022. And I went, oh, maybe it needs that much training. But she's, you know, as an adventurer and a public speaker, she inspires people. And when you actually speak to her as well, she also has this love of really inspiring the world and transforming hope, inspiration, and transformation, not just into people, but what I loved about her as well is her vision to actually put hope, inspiration, and transformation into our next generation, into the children. So Shadi, thank you for being part of Hit Talks, and I'd like to give you your 8 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, when you invited me on, it filled me with fear, and I just put my timer on. I thought to myself, what? No preparation and turning up and talking to some strangers. This is going to go terribly wrong, but here goes. So I'm not talking about the female or the masculine. I'm going to talk about the child. And the child is playful. And I think we're all born with that natural playful instinct. We want to discover things. We want to explore things. And as we grow older, the ego comes in. The fears tap in, and we stop doing the things that we love. My role as such in the past was marketing, and I did a very boring, mundane job. I decided that I was going to break the mold and give up my career and take adventures up. So I go on extreme explorations, and as Vicky said, I teach children how to conquer their fears and live in a space that's probably a little bit unusual. Breaking that mold of a woman has to be at home raising their children, a woman must do these things. I don't believe in any of that. I think you should, and the men should, do anything that fills you with joy. Find what fills your heart with pure joy, fun. Don't plan it. Planning is really not where I'm strong at. I think that things should be done organically and very much felt as through your body as to what makes you feel good. So my explorations take me to very extreme places in the world. That requires a little bit of planning, but generally speaking, I just throw myself into it. So if somebody says to me, would you like to do something? I don't think about it. I just say yes, and then work out how I'm going to do whatever the project may be. I see a lot of playfulness in the animal kingdom, which I really like to look at because animals generally really inspire me. In particular, dolphins. So one of my biggest fears was the ocean, thanks to Jaws. And I decided that I can't cope with this. Having this fear of the ocean is not going to fill me with any good. I'm going to learn how to scuba dive. So I learned to scuba dive, and on one of my dives, we came up to lots of dolphins, and I thought, well, I want to capture their attention. What am I going to do? I'm underwater, I can't make a really loud sound. I'm going to play. So I started doing these really weird motions, spinning around, and sort of sparking that curiosity within the dolphins. And within seconds, they were all swimming around me. And this notion of being playful allows you to spark your creativity within you and find the things that really make you feel alive and for you to be able to fulfill your maximum potential. I generally say that if you have 2 or 3 things that you're terribly scared of, those are the things you should do. So for me, I'm terrified of heights, so I climb mountains. I don't like the ocean, so I dive. I don't like public speaking, so I public speak. I find children terrifying because they ask the most awesome questions, so I work with children. So have a think about the things that really fill you with fear, and over the next few days, maybe start thinking, how can I possibly tackle those things? What are the things that are holding you back from living your maximum potential? It's not about money, it's not about ego, it's about that little thing that you had within you when you were little, playful, and open to challenges with no fears, no restrictions, and you've gone, no, I'm not going to do that because X, Y, Z. I would say go and tackle those things and live your best life, and definitely to be different. That's where the magic happens. And that's my probably 5 minutes. I'm very sorry it's so short, but thank you.
Short and perfect. Thank you so much. And I loved that you spoke about playfulness, because just for the viewers here, is that every episode of Hit Talks is not just taken of, oh, let's just have that day. So I work a lot with the ancient Mayan calendar, and I also work a lot with energy. And so the days that we have Hit Talks going live are around certain energetic days. So today, the energetic day in the ancient Mayan calendar, in the ancient Mayan calendar is all about playfulness, and it's all about fun. It's all about inner child. It's all about, getting out there and just having fun. And so when I speak to the speakers and they say, oh, what do we want to talk about? And I say, well, we've got the power of 8, which is all about abundance and all about infinity and harmony. And then today is the energy is guided by abundance as well. So abundance and playfulness. And when we think about it, with anything to do with hope and inspiration and transformation, when we have fun with what we do, does it not just light us up? When we actually, I love doing this, it just literally vibrates every single cell in my body. I love meeting new people, and it is fun. And when you bring a little bit of fun, a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of your intentions of delivering hope, inspiration and transformation into whatever you do, then I do believe, as you know, my favorite word is I do believe that it will be amazing, and I do believe that magic will happen. And again, about having fun, I'd like to, our next speaker, we met we were speaking, I think it was London, and it was a fair few years back. But then as we connected, we decided to have a little bit of fun and go and do a Facebook Live. And it was just like, everyone wanted to be part of our fun, our little fun circle. And so Shaquille, yes, he's from Birmingham, which is very close to me. And again, background in business, He's done many things, from being in the army, and he does a lot of sales speaking and a lot of public speaking. And he also has online communities where he's actually doing online networking, which I go in and speak. And, you know, and we do things together, because one thing we do believe, especially in this new world, is that together is better. And then when we work together to give hope, inspiration, transformation, when we work together to give abundance, when we work to get together to eradicate ego, when we work together to literally go to a different place for support, then, as I say, magic happens. So Shaquille, I'd love you to take the floor to have your 8 minutes.
Thank you very, very much, Vicky. You know what? Never has there been a more important time than now for doing collaboration and people coming together. We are in incredible times. And you know what? It's so funny. What a non-coincidence. I'm actually going to be talking about fear as well. So I could have partnered up with Shadi, and we could have done 14 or 16 minutes between us. I want to talk about fear. Right now, we're in a time where fear is on its 10x. You know, it's like there's a competition for fear, as if they're, you know, who can be more fearful than the person next door? Who can be more fearful? You know, I was out in the supermarkets, and imagine if I'm at the till, we call it the till in the UK, where you pay, and there's an elderly gentleman. He's sort of only got 1 or 2 items. I've got a lot of items. He's behind me. I've tapped him on the shoulder to say, "Sir, would you like the space in front of me?" And he's almost attacked me. "Get away from me, get away from me." And I'm thinking, and this was in the very early days of the lockdown, when we didn't really know a lot about this pandemic. And I thought, oh my God, the fear that we have has gone off the scale. And I've always been somebody who's always been conscious of fear, because this is something that I had to overcome many, many fears. I got into rock climbing and mountaineering at a very, very early age. And I had to deal with some fears, because I did not like being, I didn't like heights. If I looked down, my knees would tremble. I'm human just like everybody else, but I was also a soldier in the British Army. And as a soldier, as an officer in the military, you're faced with a lot of scary situations. And so you've got to learn to deal with fear at a very early stage. And you've got to have strategies for dealing with your fears. Now, we are only born with 2. I hope that's the right way around. I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, we are born with 2 fears. We're born with 2 fears only. One fear is the fear of falling. So you've all been in your bed at night when you've had this dream, and in that dream you've jolted and you've woken up because you're falling. You're hanging on the edge of a cliff, and suddenly you let go and then you woke up. And the other fear that you're born with is the fear of loud noises. So where the hell do all the rest of the fears come from? The fear of being hit by a car, fear of being eaten by a wild animal. Although in my built-up city, I don't have to worry about that one too much. The biggest wild animal in my area is a fox, and they're only about this big. But we have a lot of irrational fears as well. And what happens is these fears hold you back. Now, I've dealt with my fears perhaps a little too well, to the point where my wife gets annoyed with my lack of anxiety and my lack of fear. I've lost my business and lost everything on 2 occasions. So that means literally down to 0 to pennies in the pocket. And my wife is absolutely berserker with me, because I show no fear, I show no anxiety, I show no distress. Because I just think it's part of life, and what you can do once, you can do again. So what's happening is that we are being indoctrinated with fears. We are being controlled. We're being programmed into fears. There are fears that we have that we definitely didn't have growing up as children. I remember as a child, maybe up until I was about 14 or 15, we had large trees in the back garden. I would climb those trees right to the top, 100-foot trees, and we'd jump from tree to tree. Now, 4 decades past that, I would never dream of doing that. I've got 3 children. I would never dream of letting my children jump from tree to tree. We put kids' gloves on them. And, what fear does, and especially in the current, I want to sort of try and wrap it around the current situation that we're in at the moment. I don't want to get into the argument of what is real and what is not in terms of this pandemic. There's a lot of debate between doctors, and I leave the scientists to debate that. But what I want to talk about is that when you live in a state of fear, just because there are negative situations going around you doesn't mean you have to live in that state of fear to complement it. A lot of people think, wow, we've got this pandemic, I better really be scared. Okay, because what that does is it lowers your immune system. It lowers your vibration. This is stuff that I learned from Vicky, by the way, because until I met Vicky, I didn't know what vibration was and the energy and the earth and sort of being in sync and synchronicity. These are things I genuinely, I'm not saying it because Vicky's here, these are things that I hadn't really heard before. And, you know, my background was business. And I thought, what the hell has all this got to do with anything? And you know what? Right now, in the current situation that we're in, it has all come forward and it's all come into play. And I'm surrounded by people who I think, you know, are living in fear. I still get on and do my thing. I still do my business. I still run my business, and I haven't allowed it to get in the way. So, you know, I'll give you an example of how powerful fear can be. There's a story of an American story. One of these railway workers, the ice box carts, you know, the freezer containers on the train. His job was to clean it. He got locked inside. Somebody shut the door whilst he was cleaning it. In the morning, they found him dead, frozen to death, but the freezer wasn't on. The fear killed him. He felt that in his mind, he knew that I'm stuck in an ice box. I must now freeze. And guess what? They found him all huddled up with all the symptoms of somebody who's frozen to death. And he wasn't frozen. He just died from the fear. So, you know, this is exactly how extreme fear is. Now, look, fear is just a set of beliefs, you know, and the beliefs that you have are totally up to you. You've got to look at what will, you know, does the fear serve me? If the fear doesn't serve you, then it's not any good for you. Have a different belief. Does it protect you from anything? Does being petrified change your life for the better? No, it doesn't. But I promise you, it will cause you harm. Does fear, does that have any conflict with your values? And you know, does it have any conflict with your values? If having that fear belief conflicts with your values, it's a fear that you need to get rid of. And, you know, does it conflict with your personal philosophies? Get rid of the fear. Don't live in fear. You know what? My life is now all around living an empowered life. And how you live an empowered life is you change what you believe. You change what you believe, and you start having new experiences by living an empowered life. And I think that's my 8 minutes.
Thank you so much. And as you say, no synchronicity, talking about fear and everything rolling through, because again, it's just what we are guided to speak about. And fear, what does it do to us? Honestly, you know, I'm sure all of us here watching live and all of us here watching the replay are thinking, well, I'm sure there's more than 2 fears that I've got, and it's not just those 2 fears you've mentioned. I'm fearful of this, I'm fearful of that. And we've all heard false evidence appearing real. And I just want to share with you, because when you were talking about the, you know, being in the business world and meeting me and understanding vibration and energy and everything else, because yes, I was very much, as I said, in the corporate, in the business, in that kind of arena. But it's, you know, it really has opened my eyes, the way people think you're either a business person or you're a spiritual person or a woo-woo person. Do you know what I mean? You just think, why can't you be both? You know, you can run really successful businesses and then still meditate and pray and do yoga and, you know, and those things. There doesn't have to be, or there isn't any separation from it at all. And as a chartered surveyor and somebody in property, I know a lot about foundations of buildings and everything else. And I understand that how you build a business, the foundations of a business. But since I've actually, let's say, woken up, then the foundations of my business and my life is so different. You're talking about fear. I've actually got there, transmute fear and light jumps in. Transmute fear, light jumps in. And that's what I live. And we constantly work in transmuting this fear, because the people around us, ourselves sometimes, it's there. And so when we can work with the energies and we can work with transmuting the fear, then not just light jumps in, amazing people jump in, like everybody here in this room, everybody here watching the replay. That's what happens. So which brings me on to the next speaker as well. Again, about bringing light in, because you can feel the light of this lady when you speak to her and when you listen to her, because, and very much because, you know, she's had to be a light in the masculine world that she's been in. From myself as well, being in a very male-dominated corporate world, you know, we got on so well. You know, I believe, you'll have to correct me here, Mandy, but I believe you are I think you're the first British fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force. And as well as, you know, working in a masculine field, as well as being a wife and a mother and doing all this juggling and the masculine and the feminine, and also inspiring everybody around you. You know, we're so glad for you being here as part of Hit Talks, and I give you your 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Fantastic stuff. So I had planned nothing. Now, I know you're all thinking that's rubbish. Of course you plan. But Vicky said to us, don't plan. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just sit in here and like soak it up. And then we got quite deep at the start. And I was thinking, I've got nothing deep to say. Oh no, what on earth can I possibly talk about? And then we shifted to talk about fight, flight, fear. It shifted to Shadi talking about fear. And it made me think, you know what, that's something that I really want to talk about as well, but not just about fear. I was initially going to talk about laughter. Now, I have got the world's worst laugh. Now, Shadi will back me up. I am a foghorn on helium. You can hear me from eons away. And when I laugh, it's infectious. But what's fantastic about laughter is it binds people. It brings people together, and it creates this happiness and this intimacy. Physical changes actually take place in our body when we're laughing. And it actually protects our bodies. It strengthens our immune system. It releases endorphins. What is there not to love about laughter? But one of the things I genuinely love about it is that humor can shift perception. I say that because actually, if you can use humor when you're feeling fearful, it turns it on its head. And it's fascinating. So when I left the Air Force, I hadn't quite had enough of flying. So I joined the Volunteer Reserve, and I flew cadets for about 8 years. I gave it up finally last Christmas. And when you fly cadets, you can see as they walk out to the aircraft, they are often gripped with fear. They are about to get into an aeroplane for the first time. They look, there's a woman. Oh, there's the male and female. They've been expecting a man. But no, there's a woman there. Okay, they sit in next to me. It's fantastic. And I say, hi, have you ever flown before? No. They're gripped by fear. And I think, okay, so I've got to use humor to break them down. And I do. I start to tell the odd joke, not really crass jokes, but, you know, putting them at ease. And it's phenomenal. You see them relaxing. They feel they're getting into a safe place. The story I'm going to share with you was about a girl. It was my last flight of the day and I was quite tired. She walked out to the aircraft and she looked fearful. She looked petrified. I'll be honest, she had so much eye makeup on, it was slightly distracting, and I was concerned that under G-force, the weight of the mascara might prevent her from opening her eyes. But we taxied out, we got airborne, and we started to fly up, down, left and right. She started to relax. She was really good. She was potentially the best pilot I'd ever flown with. I said, let's do some turns, initially at a 30-degree angle of bank. Most cadets up and down by 200 or 300 feet, but not Emily. She nails it. I thought, wow, unbelievable. I said, let's do a 60-degree turn. Now, I never do this with cadets on their first trip because, quite frankly, it's a little bit dangerous. When you roll to 60 degrees, you lose all of the lift over the wings. And unless you pull hard back on the stick and add full power, your nose comes slicing through the horizon and you end up in a spiral descent to death. Well, I haven't lost any yet, but okay, so there we are. I said to her, would you like to do a 60-degree turn? And she said, all right. I said, what you need to do, and she said, don't tell me. I read about this in a book. I thought, well, this is going to be fascinating. I'm expecting the nose to come down, but no. Emily rolls in with no preparation, no guidance from me. She adds the power, she pulls back on the stick, and she does it perfectly. It was slightly annoying, if I'm brutally honest. She was so good. But we started to fly amongst the clouds. I describe it as dancing amongst the gods. You're up in the skies, going through the clouds. It's truly wonderful. As we were going, I looked across and I saw what I thought was a smile. It was not actually, it was wind. But there we go, you can't have everything. I thought I was breaking her down. I said, would you like to do some aerobatics maneuvers? We're going to do loop the loop. We're going to do barrel rolls. I taught her how to do a loop. We lower the nose. We accelerate to 140 knots. We pull hard back on the stick. You look for the horizon. You see it coming in. And in my cockpit, you yell, yee-haw, at the top of your voice. As I did my first one, I pulled out the bottom, and you know if you hit perfection, because the whole aeroplane shakes violently. I was fully expecting it, but no, I obviously did not hit perfection on this time, and mine was beautifully smooth. I give her control. She does the maneuver, she grunts, she pulls up, I yell yee-haw. She did not. She pulled out the bottom of her loop, and it went da-da-da-da-da-da. I looked across, and she has suddenly got a radiant smile on her face, and that smile said to me, I'm better than you. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need to break this girl down. Well, I'm joking. I actually thought I need to challenge her. I pushed her. She was so talented. And we landed the airplane. We were taxiing in, and I said to her, I've never flown with anyone with so much raw, natural talent as you. And you know what she said to me? I bet you say that to everyone. I thought, no, I've never said it to anyone before. Is this something you want to do? And she said, oh my gosh, I actually really can't believe you've just said that. This champagne cork popped from her. And what came out was unbelievable. It was her dream. It was all she had ever wanted to do the whole of her life. She'd been so racked by a fear of failing. She had decided not to try and not to engage. Because what happens when we give something 100% and we don't achieve it? Well, that's way more scary than blaming it on the fact that you didn't try. And I said, Emily, you cannot live your life like this. I said, how are you doing at school? She went, that I hate it. I said, that enables this, and you're brilliant. Now, I saw her a year later. She walked past me in the corridor. I recognised the eye makeup, if I'm honest. And she said, oh, ma'am, it's me. And I said, it's you. It's Emily, the best pilot I've ever flown with. And she said, oh, I can't believe it. I just wanted to tell you, I got all my exams and I'm going to do it. I want to become a pilot still in the Air Force. And I said, do you know what? It makes you realise laughter helps. It breaks down fear. Overcoming a fear of failure is what is so important. And actually for Emily, that couldn't have been more relevant that day, because actually she felt empowered. But I tell you what, more than anything, the art of giving someone that inspiration, sharing a love of something that you have got and passing that love on, as I know Shadi does. Every time that she goes out, she inspires the next generation to be better than they believe possible. And that is what is truly important. So for me, it's all about empowerment. It's about inspiring, and it's about overcoming that fear of failure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. What an amazing story. And how many times have we said on the viewers and the guests here, we've said to somebody, I bet you say that to everybody. It could be, I bet you say that to all the girls. I bet you say that to all the boys. And again, it's all molding together here, because, you know, it goes back to the ego as well, isn't it? We want our ego to feel that we're the only one that you say you're the best student. You know, it's only me, it's only me. But giving somebody that belief, and something I say as well is that, you know, it's amazing how everything is just, all the talks are just synchronizing together, as they always do. But it's amazing, because how many times do we actually have the fear, but we're not able to run with it because of the fear of the judgment? And a lot of it is about what other people think. And I love the way that, as you say, you believed in Emily more than she believed in herself. And that's the thing. And I know a lot of people on this call, and a lot of people watching this as the replay, if you actually think about it, how many times have you yourself believed in others more than they believed in themselves to help them with their transformation? Or how many others have actually believed in you more than you believed in yourself for you to be able to transform? And that's exactly, Mandy, what you've done for Emily as well. So absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. Transformation, believing, inspiring, and coffee. So I'm going to add the coffee in because our next speaker has just written a book on coffee, and Dr. Sanjeev Chopra has also been part of Hit Talks from the beginning. Dr. Sanjeev Chopra is amazing talks on coffee, but also diabetes and happiness. And again, from Boston, I would like to bring Dr. Sanjeev Chopra onto the stage.
Thank you so very much, Vicky, for that kind introduction. I was thinking about the time in November when in Puerto Vallarta, Amita, you and I met for the very first time, and Rick was there as well. And it's forged this amazing friendship. And as you may know, you mentioned some of the books I'm writing or have written, but I'm also writing a book with Rick right now. And it's about the 7 laws of speaking and writing. And we were talking a little bit about some of the elements that have already been discussed earlier today in these amazing presentations about fear. You know, Mark Twain once said, "Do the thing you fear most, and the death of fear is certain." Was listening to Shadi talk about children and the hope and inspiration they bring. It brings to mind a quote from Rabindranath Tagore, Nobel laureate, who once said, "Every child comes with the message that God is not yet discouraged of man." Every child comes with the message, God is not yet discouraged of man. So I woke up this morning, I met one of my dearest friends for coffee, parked at a coffee shop 6 feet away in our cars. And we talked about life. And then I took a golf lesson. And then I came back and I said, I was thinking about life and thinking, if one word comes to me, what is it? And the word that bubbled up was gratitude. Gratitude for an amazing childhood, my life in the United States, my amazing family, my parents, grandparents, uncles, my one brother, Deepak, my wife, my kids, and now my 2 beautiful granddaughters. So it's something that we can be mindful of. We can think about what we're grateful for on a regular basis. And I urge people to make it a habit. If the only prayer you said in your life is thank you, it would suffice. If the only prayer in your life you say is thank you, it would suffice. This is a quote from Meister Eckhart. So we can be grateful not only about the grand, big things in our life, but the very small things or the daily things that we take for granted. The morning sunrise, the evening sunset, the beautiful clouds in the sky. You look at the different shapes and suddenly you can see the map of Australia, or you can see Snoopy. The birds chirping. It's really a blessing to be aware of that. Pause and ask yourself, even right now, everyone listening, let's take a pause and ask yourself, what are 2 or 3 things you're grateful for today, in this very moment? Thich Nhat Hanh, brilliant spiritual leader from Vietnam, a monk, said, "The present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments." The present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments. So let's cultivate this feeling of gratitude, cultivate your friendships. One of the best things about Hit Talks is sort of becoming friends with so many amazing individuals. Following these presentations, I've then reached out, or others have reached out to me, and then we've had a 1 hour, 2 hour discussion and forged these amazing friendships. So, best-selling author by the name of James Rohn, he said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So cultivate your friendships, choose people who will inspire you, who will have the same core values. That was also mentioned earlier during this Hit Talk segment. Robert Emmons, the father of modern positive psychology, has done research. And it turns out that just like in everything in life, there is a happiness formula. And this is based on the study of monozygotic twins and comparing them to dizygotic twins. And what it says is that 50% of our happiness is genetic. It's a set point. We're born with it. And amazingly, only 10% is living conditions. As long as we have a roof and running water, whether you live in a mansion in Beverly Hills or the slums of Calcutta or the shanty towns of Jowtown, 10% accounts for your happiness. And 40% is voluntary action. What we can do to nurture others, to mentor, to help. One of the easiest ways to be happy is to make others happy. But that 50% set point is malleable. And you can increase that, and we all know that, from exercise, behavioral cognitive therapy, antidepressants, but most profoundly by expressing gratitude. So Robert Emmons did a study where he randomized a large group for 6 weeks, 3 of them half the group every evening jotted down 3 things they did that day. And the other half jotted down 3 things they were grateful for. And the group that did that, that set point went up by an astounding 25%. Oliver Sacks was a brilliant neurologist and compassionate author from New York. Absolutely brilliant. Wrote a couple of books. At the end of his life, he was dying of cancer, and he wrote the following: "My predominant feeling is one of gratitude. I have loved and been loved. I have been given much, and I have given something in return. Above all, I have been a sentient being, a thinking animal on this beautiful planet. And that in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure." Sacks was a role model who showed how gratitude can lead to a life that ends with grace. And a final comment: we all have a choice in everything we do. We want to be fearful, we want to be courageous. We want to sing, we want to have more laughter. We want to have more poetry in our life, more music, the best friends. So everything is a choice. And that's the one thing that distinguishes human beings from animals. An animal is hungry, it will kill. You and I can be hungry, and for whatever reason, it could be spiritual, we can choose to fast. It's a choice. And this is what Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, said. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning in 9 days. He wrote that book. And he said, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So I leave you with the following thought: let us all be grateful. Let us be more grateful. There are countless opportunities to express gratitude. If you don't already have a gratitude journal, I urge you to start one once a day, at the end of the day, or even once a week. As you're looking at the 7 days ahead of you, reflect on what's transpired and write down what you're grateful for. And that will bring hope, inspiration, and truly transform our lives for the better. So thank you very much for indulging me and listening to me. I'm so inspired by all of you. Namaste.
Oh, thank you, Sanjeev. Well, I don't really need to sum it up. You've summed it up. The gratitude will give you the hope, the inspiration, and transformation. So when I'm actually away on holiday, Sanjeev needs to be the next Hit Talks host. So, but it is amazing, isn't it? Gratitude. And I am just going to go back to my business days, because I speak to people about it all the time. I would never have ever thought, as I was on the tube and on the train traveling to London and back, and going into all these bank meetings and all the rest of actually doing a gratitude list. Maybe that was just me, but it truly is. And the gratitudes, whether or not you write it down, whether or not you just say it, whether or not you just feel it, I am honestly so grateful for everything that I've got in my life. And I was speaking to somebody the other day, and I said, if you put me in a cardboard box and you left me on a desert island, I would still be grateful. Would I have been able to say that 5 years ago? No, I wouldn't have been able to say that 5 years ago. But this is what we talk about, moving forward and evolving. And this brings me on to my next speaker about moving on and evolving, because I've seen this lady's evolution, and she's a soul sister of mine. And again, she's all the way from the USA, and she helps people within the quantum field. So we work together within quantum healing, but she's a rebel. I'm not really a rebel. I think I'm more of an angel. So I think that's why we get on well. So I call myself a galactic angel or a galactic unicorn, a guardian angel or a galactic unicorn. And she's the rebel. So I think this is why we love each other so much. But she guides and encourages women to really, transmute their fear from the rebel side. So Erica, I'm so glad that you're actually here with us at Hit Talks. And I'd like to give you your 8 minutes.
Oh, thank you, Vicki. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm especially grateful that I got to go last and listen to all of you guys' beautiful talks. As Vicki knows, I am a big believer in coming from the heart, and for me that means obviously no preparation. So this is a beautiful container you've created for that. And it's a special day for me, and I'm really appreciative that Sanjeev went into gratitude. I'm particularly grateful for this day. It's the day that 23 years ago, I had the blessing to become a mother. So it's my oldest daughter's birthday today. And when I was reading through the email in preparation for this and thinking, on what this day means, and particularly around abundance and play, it really feels special to me to talk about abundance. And I think abundance has really become like a buzzword for us, right? And I think a lot of people, when they, probably not in this audience, but around the world, when people think about abundance, they think about money, or they think about material things, or they think about that kind of abundance. And really what I'd like to speak on, and what's really on my heart today, is an abundance of love. We all know that there's a lot going on in the world right now that could really take us into some dark places. And I'm not saying that we should bury our head in the sand or ignore what's going on in the world, but I really think it's beautiful and potent and powerful right now to focus on love. And for me as a mother, obviously, when I was able to hold my baby for the first time 23 years ago, that for me was a really profound moment. It transformed my view of love. It taught me a deeper lesson on what love really is. And it brought me to this place of really caring about the world on a deeper level, because now I had created a human being that was going to grow up in this world that I lived in. And it started for me a very long and sometimes bumpy journey of what I could do as, a single human in the world in terms of really making a difference, and really making sure not only that my kids, because I have 2 daughters, grew up knowing that I loved them, but what could I do in the world to really start to make a difference so that humanity in general was more focused on love. And as a single person out of the billions of people that live on this planet, it seems like a really overwhelming thing, particularly since I was like 19 years old when she was born, and was really not even sure who I was yet. And so understanding that it doesn't matter who we are or where we come from, right? You're watching people speak in this beautiful platform that Vicki has put together for us. But even if you're not someone who's going around doing public speaking events, even if you're not someone who has a business where you work with people, right, that to help them in their own life, what is it that you can do every day that will leave the world a better place? What is it that you can do with the people around you, even, you know, the people in your experience, the people that you run into at the grocery store, you know, your own family? What is it that you can do to really cultivate this layer of love and start to help us heal humanity as a whole? Because I truly believe, obviously, it starts with the people that we interact with. And while many of us, myself included, right, like many of us are outwardly focused, often are focused on doing the big things, are focused on creating, you know, stuff in our lives that feels really big. I believe that when we bring it back to the small things, when we come back into ourselves, when we ask ourselves, like, what is it really I can do today to show my own self-love, to show the people directly around me love, then we are going to start this tidal wave of love that gets to wash over the world and really begins to show us and change the direction that I feel, you know, that we're all trying to do, right? We've all showed up in this space because we care. We care enough to show up here to have the conversation. We care enough to show up here to listen to people talk. And I think even for those of you that are here listening that aren't speaking necessarily, understand how important your role is in this. And I really want to celebrate you for coming here and caring enough to really take time out of your day to listen to this, to take time out of your day. I see the chat box blowing up, right? Like we're interacting and you're taking part in this and you're showing these beautiful people that are here sharing their message. And for a lot of us, it's uncomfortable, right? Like when I first started doing this and I realized it was going to mean I had to be in front of camera to really like have the impact I wanted to have, it was terrifying. You want to talk about fear? One of my top 3 fears was public speaking, was showing up in front of people on the camera. So just understanding that it's all of us, and in whatever way that we can, in whatever way that we can get through the fear to show up and do our part, it's just as important to do the little things that may seem little to you now. Those are actually more important than the things that we tend to believe are big things, right? It's the little things in your day-to-day life. Somebody said to me once, and it's one of my favorite things I think I've ever heard. Somebody said to me once, the ceremony is in your day. Your day-to-day life is the ceremony. It's not the big things we do, although yes, those are important too, but it's the small moments. And I've always loved that saying because it brings us into this present moment where we actually then pay attention to the little moments, which add up to the big moments, which add up to our entire life, right? I told you, I started this off by telling you that my oldest daughter turned 23 today. It blows my mind that she's 23, but she got to be 23 by all of those little moments, right? Showing up in those little moments. And so I really just want to leave you with the thought that every moment does count. You do matter. And it's important that we really continue to do our part to show up in those little moments. And Vicky, I really wanted to take the time to say how much I appreciate you, how thankful I am for this creation that you've put together. I wasn't 100% sure what to expect. And this by far is one of the most beautiful things I've ever taken part in. And you should be so proud of yourself for creating such a space for people to really connect in such a beautiful manner where there really is no agenda. And I think that's very rare. So I just applaud you and thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening to me. And I hope you have the most amazing day.
Oh, thank you, my love. Thank you so much. You know, I do have to, you made me well up there. No, I do have to say that every single one of you, you know, you touch my hearts, and I'm sure that you touch all the viewers' hearts. And it's just purely, as I say, because we are from the heart with no intention, just spreading hope, just spreading inspiration, just spreading transformation. And as I say, I love to say is that sometimes, you know, when you're in this space and you don't feel very hopeful and you don't feel very inspired and you don't feel that you're going to be able to transform, just come to us and we'll give you a bit of a hit. Do you know what I mean? We'll just say, come on then, let's start getting back. Let's get some hope, some inspiration, some transformation into you. Let's start watching some of these little 8-minute clips and snippets of wisdom. Let's just watch this and go back and let's pick up these wisdom, the nuggets, because this is what I love about it. It is the nuggets of wisdom, the little things that people are saying, and it all weaves together because we're here for one purpose. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being part of this Hit Talks. For the viewers that are actually here on live, I love you being here, and we are told that the energy is amazing when you're in the Zoom room, so thank you so much for that. We do have a poll that we're going to be putting up, just asking you a few questions, but I also want to invite you to the next Hit Talks. The next Hit Talks is on the 31st of July. Okay, so the 31st of July is the next Hit Talks, and the agenda behind the 31st of July, the energy, sorry, it's about seed, it's about growth, it's about transformation, and it's about intelligence as well. So again, Hit Talks is about wisdom, isn't it? It's little snippets of wisdom. So the day is guided by wisdom and intelligence, but it's all about seed and it's all about growing. So please do register for the next Hit Talks. I would like to say, if you can bring me back on screen, please, I would thank you. I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart from every single person that is here. You've got our email, hello@hit-talks.com. Please send us any feedback. Please send us any information, any messages, anything that you'd like to share with us. And as I say, we're a growing platform here. And I do believe, as my very good friend Veronica says, is that together is better, and together we can spread hope. Together we can spread inspiration. Together we can spread transformation all over the world. So thank you so much for being with us. My name is Vicky Thomas. I am your host, and I am so grateful for you being here, and have an absolutely amazing rest of the day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Bye.